The year was 1973. America shuddered. The Vietnam War raged on, tearing apart families and communities. Social unrest festered in the streets, with protests and demonstrations becoming a common sight. The nation was in turmoil, and the future seemed uncertain. The Cold War cast a long, dark shadow over the world. The threat of nuclear annihilation loomed large, creating an atmosphere of constant fear and anxiety. People craved an escape from the harsh realities of their daily lives. They found solace in the darkness of movie theaters. It was a place where they could forget their troubles, even if just for a few hours, and lose themselves in the magic of cinema. But a new kind of fear awaited them in these darkened rooms. This was not the familiar, comfortable chill of Dracula's castle, or the predictable scares of old monster movies. This was something different. This was raw, visceral, and deeply unsettling. This was The Exorcist. It brought a new level of terror that audiences had never experienced before. The 1970s were a time of disillusionment. The idealism of the 1960s had faded, replaced by a sense of cynicism and despair. People felt lost and disconnected from the world around them. The hope of the 1960s had curdled. People felt lost. Technology, which had once promised a bright future, now offered little comfort. The unknown loomed large, and the world seemed a darker, more frightening place. Into this void stepped a film that tapped into our deepest fears. The Exorcist was more than just a horror movie. It was a reflection of the anxieties and uncertainties of the time. It was more than a movie. It was a cultural phenomenon that resonated with audiences on a profound level, leaving an indelible mark on the collective psyche. It was a cultural phenomenon. The Exorcist captivated and terrified audiences, becoming a landmark in the history of cinema and a testament to the power of film to reflect and shape the fears of a generation. Before, horror was a different beast. It was a genre that thrived on the unknown and the unseen. It dealt with the supernatural, with ghosts and spirits that haunted the living. But it was largely fantastical, a realm of imagination where anything was possible. We had Dracula and Frankenstein's monster, iconic figures that defined the genre. These were creatures of the night. They were threats, yes, but they were also distant, almost mythical. But they were not real. They were products of makeup and special effects, creations of the silver screen. We could enjoy their scares from a safe distance, knowing that they couldn't reach us. Gothic horror was in vogue, with its dark, brooding settings and eerie atmospheres. Think creaky castles, misty moors, and shadowy figures lurking in the fog. These films relied on atmosphere and suggestion, creating a sense of dread without showing too much. They were more about mood than gore, more about what you didn't see than what you did. There was a certain romanticism to it all. Vampires were tragic figures, cursed to eternal life. Werewolves were tortured souls, victims of their own nature. Even the monsters had a heart, a touch of humanity that made them relatable, even sympathetic. Then came. It ripped the heart out of romantic horror. This was not a story about charming vampires. This was about a demon, a real, malevolent entity. And it possessed a child. The film felt real. It took place in a normal suburban home. The characters were relatable. The horror was intimate. This wasn't happening in a far-off land. This could happen to anyone. This was terrifying, was a game changer. It introduced psychological horror to the mainstream. It showed us that the scariest monsters are often human. Resonated because it tapped into societal fears. The 1970s were a time of great upheaval and uncertainty. People were looking for something that could explain the chaos around them, and horror films provided an outlet for these anxieties. The Vietnam War had left deep scars. People questioned authority. They grappled with faith. The war had not only affected those who fought in it, but also those who stayed behind, watching the horrors unfold on their television screens. The film reflected these anxieties. It was a mirror to the societal fears and uncertainties of the time. It showed us the battle between good and evil. This wasn't just a battle on the screen, it was a battle that people felt in their everyday lives. It asked hard questions about faith and doubt. Could people still believe in a higher power when the world seemed so chaotic and cruel? The film's impact was seismic. It wasn't just another horror movie. It was a cultural phenomenon. It shattered box office records. It sparked controversy. It terrified audiences. People couldn't stop talking about it, and it became a topic of conversation in households across the country. More importantly, it changed horror forever. It set a new standard for what horror films could achieve. It ushered in a new era of realism. No longer were horror films just about monsters and supernatural events. They were about real fears and real anxieties. It showed that horror could be more than just jump scares. It could delve deep into the human psyche and explore the darkest corners of our minds. It could be deeply disturbing. It could make you question your own beliefs and fears. It could stay with you long after the credits rolled. The images and themes lingered in the minds of viewers, haunting them long after they left the theater. The legacy of this film is undeniable. It has influenced countless other films and continues to be a benchmark in the horror genre. It remains a benchmark of horror. Its impact is still felt today, and it continues to inspire new generations of filmmakers. It's a film that continues to terrify and provoke. Even decades after its release, it still has the power to shock and disturb.